Do you like remote work? I know I do, and with team members in 48 different countries all over the world, I better like remote work. I get a lot of people asking me, I tried to hire remotely and I ran into this problem or that problem. And listen, let me tell you, remote hiring comes with its unique set of challenges. From vetting candidates you may never meet in person to assessing the soft skills essentially for remote work success. So with that said, here's an 8 to 10 minute guide on how to hire remote employees effectively and build a strong remote team. I've got 10.5 points on this, and the 0.5 is very exciting, but you gotta wait till the end of the video to be able to watch this because the algorithm said that if I say these types of things at the beginning of the video, you won't actually just scrub to the very end, which you may or may not do right now, but please, this stuff is all gold. So number one, you need to be able to define the role and set clear expectations. So before you actually begin the hiring process, you need to clarify the roles, requirements, and how it fits into a remote environment. So what are the core responsibilities? You need to be able to list the roles daily, weekly, and occasional tasks. You need to have some key skills for remote success. You need to identify skills essential for remote work, such as time management and digital communication and self-discipline. And you need to also be specific about skills needed for asynchronous work as opposed to synchronous work. If you're interested in knowing what asynchronous work is, go check out one of the other videos that I have on this YouTube channel. I've made like 10 of them on that particular subject. You also need to be able to figure out working hours and time zones. So for global teams, specifically, any overlap in working hours, or if asynchronous work is preferred, this will actually attract candidates who can meet the time zone needs of your particular team. Number two, you need to use targeted job boards and networks to attract top remote talent. So use job boards specializing in remote positions, remote specific job board sites like remote.co, We Work Remotely, and my personal favorite, Flex Jobs, specialize in remote job listings, attracting candidates familiar with remote work's demands. You can also check out professional networks like LinkedIn. That's a very powerful tool for recruiting and allows you to search for candidates by skills and location. But remember, if you're working remotely, you don't generally need location that much, but I would essentially look at time zones. And you also need to be able to do some engaging with remote work communities on Slack or Reddit channels. That's a big database. I mean, I know that particularly on Reddit, there's a huge community of remote work minded people, and they're very passionate on there. So if you want to check that out, that might also be a really great direction as well. Number three is design a remote friendly hiring process. So the hiring process should reflect the actual remote environment in which your candidates will work. So as an example, include a task that requires asynchronous communication, like a written assignment or recorded video response. And this shows their ability to actually manage tasks independently. I also think you should use video interviews on platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams to help gauge their setup, body language, and communication style. It's important, at least in my opinion, even though you will be working primarily asynchronously with these people, to be able to jump on that first call, because you can get a vibe at the beginning of those particular job search prospects or processes. And it's just, to me, everything for some candidates looks right on paper and then their vibe is just off, to be completely honest with you. But for skills-based roles, you need to be able to consider online assessments through tools like Codility or Test Gorilla to test relevant abilities in a remote friendly format. Essentially, you want to be able to test these people all equally so that they all have access to this. You're basically treating them all the same and then be able to assess them independently so that you figure out who's the best candidate. And I know that that sounds very simple, but the vast majority of people actually don't do it. They end up testing people differently. And then it's just like, oh, well, I really like this guy, but you also just didn't necessarily test him in the same disciplined way that you tested everybody else. Number four is assess technical skills and digital literacy. So technical proficiency is essential for remote employees as they rely on digital tools for communication and collaboration. So you need to be able to evaluate the familiarity of those employees with essential tools like Slack, Asana, or Google Workspaces. Ask candidates about the platforms they've used and how they manage digital workflows. What I usually like to do is when I'm setting up basically their test task or their setup, I need to be able to confirm that candidates have a reliable internet connection and a quiet workspace. And if the role demands specific equipment, ensure that they have it or can obtain it relatively easily. We have a rule, which is if someone doesn't have at least 20 megabits down and 20 megabits up, and the up is the important factor, then we need to be able to get them better internet, because you really just can't do a Zoom call, as an example, with crappy internet that doesn't have very good upload speed. You also need to figure out how are they at problem solving in a deeper way. So by doing that, you can assign technical tasks relevant to the particular role, like troubleshooting a common software issue. This shows their ability to actually handle tech challenges independently. Number 5, effective communication and collaboration are essential for remote work, where misunderstandings can actually disrupt overall productivity. So I think that most employees need to get really good at written and verbal communication. So you need to assess how clearly they communicate during interviews and written tasks, as remote teams rely on clear and concise messaging in order to be able to actually communicate. Also, we want to be able to take a look at their collaboration on style. So ask about their preferred collaboration methods and how they handle feedback, as proactive communication is essential to actually avoid communication silos. And if your team has a specific communication style, check for the alignment of that. So some people thrive with high autonomy while others prefer regular guidance, and it's important to be able to figure out your own vibe. For us at Time Doctor and running remote, we actually are like a super high autonomous organization. So for us, we say, here's the target, go attack the target. And regardless of whether or not you actually find that valuable or not in terms of your particular culture or your individual kind of perspectives, it doesn't really matter. That's how we work as a company. So we try to align all of our employees towards that way of thinking. Number 6 is you need to be able to look for self-management skills. So self-motivation and discipline are essential for remote employees who need to manage their schedules and work autonomously. So when you think about task management, you want to be able to ask candidates how they organize their day and prioritize tasks. So look for examples of managing workload independently or balancing multiple priorities, which is very important. But to be able to almost kind of counteract that, you also need to think about accountability and initiative. Remote work requires employees to take ownership of their tasks. So ask situational questions about how they actually handled missed deadlines or unexpected challenges to gauge accountability. You also need tools for self-management. So self-management tools such as Time Doctor, which I'm a little biased because I'm very heavily connected to that. That helps remote employees track their time and optimize productivity. So by using tools like Time Doctor, employees can actually monitor their working habits, set personal benchmarks, and stay accountable. And this is particularly helpful for those new to remote work or those adjusting to managing their own schedule. Honestly, time gets away from everybody. So to actually see it quantified and say, I spent X amount of hours and I did X amount of tasks, it allows you to be able to understand where is my most optimal time and how can I optimize that time for overall success. Number 7 is you need to test for culture and value alignment. And I've talked about this briefly before, but it's important to be able to make sure that you're aligning with the company's value. It's crucial for employee satisfaction and retention, and even in a remote environment. So what I would do is ask candidates to share examples of times that they actually demonstrated qualities that align with your company's values. And if your company's values innovation, for example, ask about times they've solved a problem creatively. And a really important point here that I want to be able to reinforce is actually ask negative questions. Ask exclusive question, not inclusive questions. So I'll give you an example. One of the questions that I would ask is, well, we really love remote work at Running Remote and Time Doctor, but you know what? We think that it's important that at least you come into the office like 1 or 2 days per week. What do you think about that? And if they actually push back and they say, hey, this is probably not the right position for me, those are the people that we want to hire. Because if someone disagrees with us in a job interview, which connects to our core alignment in terms of our cultural structure, it's amazing because we know that that person is just going to align perfectly with what we do, which is we want to be able to empower the world's transition towards remote work. So another example is like, determine if they enjoy collaborative work or autonomy. For instance, if your company promotes team-led projects, you want someone who enjoys group work, and even in a remote setting, that's also really important. Also, reinforcing work-life balance is a big one. So remote work can be a blur of boundaries, leading to burnout and just general frustration. And you need to be able to check how candidates manage work-life balance and if they can actually set boundaries in a remote environment. As an example, it's like about 28 minutes till I end this particular task throughout my day. Then I enjoy the weekend, and that's it. I turn everything off, and unless someone literally texts me with an emergency, I am off and I'm hanging out with my kids. Number 8 is you need to be able to provide realistic job previews for the candidates. You need to give candidates a realistic view of what it's like to work remotely in your company. So I like the day in the life scenarios. You want to figure out, like, let's share a typical day in the role and ask candidates how they would handle tasks or challenges. And this allows candidates to actually envision themselves in that particular role. And this is a really important one. You need to be upfront about policies such as work hours, communication expectations, and frequency of check-ins. Transparency helps prevent misalignment. And I know that this is probably one of the biggest reasons why we've hired someone and in 3 to 6 months we've had to let them go or they've quit. It's because we just didn't really truly tell them, hey, this is what's currently happening inside of the organization, and you need to understand how we work, and you also just need to understand the state of the position that you're stepping into. Which, ironically, in the script leads on to my next point, which is highlight the challenges. So remote work sounds appealing, but comes with challenges like isolation or digital fatigue in some cases. So candidates who respond well to this are much more likely to be able to thrive in a remote setting. Number 9, you need to be able to make use of trial periods. And this is something that I've been using more and more, and it's amazing. So a trial period allows both the employer and the employee to be able to test the fit in a real working environment. So offer a trial project or a probationary period to see how the candidate actually performs and adapts to your team and work style. You need to be able to identify clear performance metrics as well. So set clear goals for the trial period using exact metrics that measure output, communication, and collaboration. You also need to be able to provide regular feedback and encouragement to the candidate to do the same thing. So this helps both parties assess compatibility and make improvements as needed. My general perspective on this is that this is a two-way engagement, right? This is, we're getting married, and you may be married to this person for months or for years or maybe even for decades. So it's important to be able to make sure everyone knows where everyone else fits so that we are entering this relationship with open eyes. And number 10 is craft a solid onboarding process. An effective onboarding process helps new remote employees feel part of the team and aligned with company goals. I do something like we put together a welcome package, and actually I have it right over here. So we actually end up having a full welcome package that we send with company swag, equipment, and a handbook on culture and policies. And those small touches, they build connection and engagement inside a remote team. Whenever we send one of those packages to somebody, we've gotten comments like, wow, the company is real. I didn't think that you guys really existed, and this proves it. I showed it to my wife, or I showed it to my husband. It's important to be able to do those little things, and those packages cost like $100. I actually have a video on this YouTube channel specifically breaking down everything that's in those boxes. But after they get that box, you need to be able to offer structured onboarding, including team introductions, trainings on tools and processes, and an overview of key responsibilities inside of the organization. I think it's also important to be able to assign a mentor or a remote buddy to help the new hire navigate their first few weeks. GitLab does this very, very successfully. And this provides a go-to person for questions and fosters connection inside of the organization. And for my very last point, the 0.51, which I didn't want to include as a full variable here, is I really think you got to do a vibe check with those employees. So everything can work on paper. They can be completely qualified. They can be absolutely happy. They can be totally engaged in the position. But the issue is that it just feels off. Something is off. And you need to be able to voice those concerns with the managers that are directly connected to hiring that particular person. Because if you don't voice those concerns and those people don't share it or do share it, then it's a big problem. But if they don't share it, then we can kind of have an open discussion about it and figure out where to be able to go next. So it's so important to be able to figure out those vibes. And if those vibes don't work, I would probably say more often than not, the actual hire doesn't work out. And I've been kind of figuring out and refining my hiring radar over the last couple years. And I'm pretty darn good, which is, I'll tell you one quick story. We ended up hiring somebody. I was training them in person. I literally flew halfway across the planet to train them for a month. And I remember sending a long email to my co-founder 3 days afterwards saying, oh my God, I think we've made a horrible mistake. And here's 3 pages of that horrible mistake, breaking down all of the different points. And I wanted to be able to document that. And we shrugged it off because we had already crossed the Rubicon. This was actually going to be a big hire for us, someone that was going to run the entire sales team. And 3 months later, guess what happened? The guy quit. My vibe was right. My radar was right. Pay attention to your vibe and share it with other team members. In conclusion, you want to be able to hire for success, not just skills. Hiring remote employees requires thoughtful preparation, an eye for qualities like self-discipline, digital proficiency, and communication skills. So by following these steps, you'll actually be able to be better equipped to find and retain remote employees who not only meet the job requirements, but also align with your company's culture and goals. So a structured approach to remote hiring ensures you're building a strong and resilient team capable of thriving in a flexible work environment. And hiring remotely is, again, one of those things that people ask me constantly. So if you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm happy to be able to help you out down there. And while you're down there, why don't you just like this video and subscribe to this YouTube channel? It is indeed free, and about 96.8% of you are not subscribed to this YouTube channel. So please go down there, subscribe, and other than that, I'll see you in the next video.